Welcome to the Team Sammy Podcast. I'm Samuel DeVries, the host, and this is a show where I really just sit back, talk about the NFL, or sometimes specifically the Lions. Enjoy. So, the NFL regular season has come to a conclusion following the Lions win against the Vikings on Sunday night. Of the four options I played out, Vikings blowout, Vikings win close, Lions win close, Lions blowout. The only one I said not possible was the one that happened, which is the Lions actually blew out the Vikings. They won 31-9. They never trailed. Their defense was unbelievable, and they really earned that one seed, probably more than any team has ever had to earn the one seed in the past, having to have all 15 of those wins to have the one seed. But here we are. Playoffs are set. Starting with the AFC, first game. It's the Bills and the Broncos. Rookie Bo Nix is going to have to travel to freezing cold Buffalo to play who should finish third place in the MVP, Josh Allen. And the Bills, there's really not much to say in this game. The Bills have been rolling. They lost, but it didn't matter. They were playing the Patriots with nobody important playing. So with those starters having at least a little bit of rest, I think the Bills win this one handily and move on to the divisional round for however many consecutive years that is, but it'll be a lot because the Bills have been on a bit of a playoff run over these past 5-6 years, however long it's been. Ravens and Steelers. The 3-seed Ravens hosting the 6-seeded Steelers. Steelers coming in on a 4-game losing streak. The offense has hit a rough patch. George Pickens is just so much to deal with on and off the field. And Russell Wilson, there was a minute there where maybe it was hey, he's back. And, it seemed a bit like that when the Steelers were 10-3. But now that they're 10-7 and they've dropped 4 straight games, I mean, there's really no good example, at least one that I can think of, where a team has lost so many games to end a regular season and then they just go in and go on a postseason run. I remember the Cardinals back in 2021. They started out 7-0 or whatever. Still strung some wins after they dropped one to the Packers on Thursday. But anyway, they went into the playoffs losing 4 of their last 6 or something, and they just got absolutely railed by the Rams. And also just consistency with the fact that the Steelers do this every year. They sneak into the wild card, which most people think they don't deserve, because really they don't. And then they get exposed for who they really are. So I think the real Steelers show up in a game that I don't really think is very close. And even though it is tough for Lamar Jackson to win in the playoffs, he's shown it 3, 4, 5 years. I don't know how long or how many times he's been to the playoffs, but he's shown it enough to where he's got 2 wins under his belt. I'll give him another one. But I'm not confident necessarily in the Ravens pick because of Lamar's problems in the playoffs, but I still think they probably end up winning big because of how bad the Steelers actually are. All right, moving on. 4-seeded Houston, 5-seeded LA. The Texans, pretty similar story, honestly, with the Steelers, a team that, for being honest, they don't really deserve a playoff spot. This is a team that snuck in. They didn't sneak in, but made it because of being in the weakest division in the NFL. C.J. Stroud's had a real down year. The one saving grace for that offense is Joe Mixon, but Stephon Diggs out for the year. He wasn't even really too much of a factor at the beginning of the year, for being honest. He had some cheap short yard touchdowns, but mean, a touchdown's a touchdown, but still, he was not as big of a factor in that offense as what kind of he was touted to be. Tank Dell, with the horrific injury he suffered, is not playing, obviously. So, but he'll still have Nico Collins. Dalton Schultz has just looked like a dude out there. Nothing special. This offense has had so many dysfunctionalities. I cannot imagine them beating the Chargers. A defense that is spectacular. I think fewest points allowed. Yeah, in fact, I'm pretty confident of that. I don't have it pulled up, but I'm pretty confident that the Chargers have allowed the fewest points. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, he's going to have that team ready to go. Justin Herbert does technically have playoff experience. He has experience leading a playoff game 28-3, or I don't remember what the score was, 24-3, 24-0, whatever it was. Ended up blowing that big lead to Jacksonville. But he's at least been there. He's seen the lights. Stroud has too, but Herbert's got more experience, and it's a Los Angeles team that has gelled very well as of late. And they look like probably in all of the NFC and AFC, probably the best wild card team overall. So to recap the AFC wild card, I have Buffalo, Baltimore, and Los Angeles all winning. Moving on to the AFC divisional, with the lowest seeded team remaining being the Chargers. They would travel to Arrowhead to play the Chiefs, which would make the second matchup the Bills and the Ravens in Buffalo. This is not hard for me for either of these games. The Chiefs are not winning. The Chiefs are not winning a playoff game. You have one of the worst offenses in the NFL, and yes, a Mahomes-led offense is one of the worst offenses in the NFL. It's okay to say that. Going up against one of the best defenses, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James. I mean, there's talent everywhere, and these guys just... Harbaugh is almost like a Dan Campbell, in the sense where, like, his guys love playing for him. They're going to be ready to go. They lost 2 games to the Chiefs this year. They are not going to let that happen a third time. Excuse me. And I think LA goes into Kansas City and wins big. And I'm pretty confident that if this were to happen, because obviously this matchup's not set in stone, not guaranteed to happen, but I'm pretty confident that if the Chargers play at the Chiefs at any point in the playoffs, I think the Chargers run them down, run through them. I mean, I really like Justin Herbert. He only threw 3 picks in over 500 attempts this year. That's unbelievable. That is a very, very difficult thing to do. 2018 Aaron Rodgers, the only one who's also done that. He only threw 2, actually. The other divisional game, Bills-Ravens. And as I brought up earlier, Lamar Jackson, playoff fraud. The one thing that would help the Ravens playing in Buffalo compared to some other teams is that they're used to the cold. I mean, even going back to, like, you look at all their divisional games, playing at Cleveland, playing at Cincy, playing at Pittsburgh, those are 3 cold outdoor environments that they play in every year, and Baltimore's, I mean, not necessarily a place where it gets a lot of snow, but it gets chilly in the winter there. That's where I would have them have more of an advantage against Buffalo than the average team. I would expect this game to be more of a defensive game, with Josh Allen showing that he really is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. I think he'll solidify that with a win over the Ravens in this hypothetical game that is not set in stone or guaranteed to happen at all. But if this game were to happen, Bills-Ravens, I think the Bills would win it by just 1 score. Pretty close game, but that moves us to the AFC Championship, LA Chargers travel to Buffalo to play the Bills. This is not a hard pick for me. I finally have it happening. I finally have Josh Allen and the Bills getting over the hump. I have them getting to the Super Bowl. It seems like we've been waiting for 6 years for the Bills to finally get over the hump. And with them being able to host the AFC Championship, that's the difference. Bringing an LA team to a freezing climate that's 3 time zones over. Josh Allen's only made it to the AFC Championship once in his career, and he had to play on the road before the Bills had really even established themselves as one of the NFL's going to be one of the consistent playoff teams that they are now. That had not been developed when Allen and the Bills went to Arrowhead in the 2020 COVID season, where they lost, I think, by 2 touchdowns. At the end of the day, the Bills have an MVP caliber quarterback, and the Chargers don't. There's just more talent on that roster, on that Bills roster, than on the Chargers roster, which is, home field advantage. All these guys, Josh Allen's been waiting so long for this to happen, for him to get this chance to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl in home. I don't think he's passing up that opportunity. So I have the Bills advancing to the Super Bowl from the AFC. Moving over to the NFC, the wild card. We've got Philadelphia, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Washington, and LA and Minnesota. Starting with Philadelphia, Green Bay, Jalen Hurts has not played the last few games, concussed in their loss to Washington a few weeks ago. But Green Bay just lost Christian Watson. The Packers lost 6 games this year. 5 of them were in division, and their one loss that wasn't against a division team was against the Eagles all the way back in Week 1. That happened in Brazil. And honestly, the Eagles are a lot better team now than they were back then, even though they were still a good team back then. Saquon Barkley, I would expect to have a really big game. And honestly, I think the Eagles run away with it pretty early on, even though I still think the Packers are a good team. I just think the Eagles are that good to where they advance somewhat with ease from the wild card. Tampa Bay, Washington. Washington, I think they're going to show that they don't belong in the playoffs yet. Not to say that their future is bleak or anything. The future is very bright. I just think they're a little bit ahead of where they're supposed to be in the rebuild, and I think that will show up against the most determined player in the NFL by the name of Baker Mayfield. Give me Tampa on that one, winning pretty easily. And I've seen some predictions out there with Washington winning. I really can't think of a scenario where Washington wins that game. Give me Tampa. And then the Monday night game in the wild card, Vikings at Rams. Vikings coming off of a very demoralizing offensive performance against the Lions. And when you have been a bad quarterback in the past and been touted as that, even if you can regain your confidence, one horrendous game can send the entire thing back to where it started. It can sink the whole ship. And I think that Sam Darnold is going to show that he is just the same old player again, like he did in Detroit. Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, is still a top 10 quarterback, unbelievable player. Puka, Kyron, Cooper Kupp. The Rams don't really have a home field advantage, which would really be the only setback there, where it's like, yes, the Vikings have to travel, but they won't be dealing with substantial crowd noise. But I just don't think the Vikings will be ready to play, ready to go up against that Rams team. Give me the Rams. The divisional, the way it's shaped out, it is Detroit, LA, Philly, and Tampa. Lions-Rams, Lions at home. I'm sure Stafford is thirsting to beat the Lions. He did beat them back in 2021, but he's lost the previous two matchups last year in the wild card, this year in week 1, both in Ford Field, both in primetime. I'm assuming this would be a primetime game. And Detroit on a bye, they're going to be healthy, healed up. They will have they're going to be ready to play. I can't imagine the Lions getting knocked out in the divisional round. Their offense played very poor in the first half against Minnesota, but their defense played well enough to keep them, to even give them the lead going into halftime after a very bad offensive performance in the first. And then their offense, was able to turn into what their offense is to get back to normal, and they took that game against Minnesota in the second half and just ran away with it. Jahmyr Gibbs is the second best running back in the NFL. There's not a soul that will convince me otherwise. It goes Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, whoever fourth place is, all the way down here. I don't. The Lions are still going to have a chip on their shoulder against the Rams, and if this situation were to happen, that Detroit crowd would be even more motivated to just bring the heat against Matthew Stafford. If you still go on Lions Twitter, they're still bashing Matthew Stafford all the time. I personally love Matthew Stafford. He will always be my quarterback at heart as a Lions fan. But not a lot of the Lions fan base thinks that way. They still view him as the enemy for whatever reason. And I think that they are going to be ready to attack if Stafford brings his Rams into Detroit. Philly and Tampa, they played in the playoffs last year. Last year was in Tampa. It was in the wild card on Monday night. The Buccaneers wiped the floor with the Eagles. But that was the Eagles with just a long, huge losing streak heading into the playoffs. There was writing on the wall that it would be a bloodbath in that game last year, and it was. This game was so hard for me to pick because the Eagles are a great team, but Baker Mayfield is unbelievable, and this guy has so much to prove. He has so many chips on his shoulder, whatever. This dude has probably the best mentality of any player in the NFL, and he is going to single-handedly keep this a game for Tampa, drag his team on his back to keep up with the just high-flying Eagles. But in the end, I would have the Eagles coming out just on top. Home field advantage, it's going to be a lot. It's always difficult to defend a mobile quarterback. The Lions last night stopped all sorts of fourth and shorts from the Vikings. If there is any sort of plays like this against the Eagles ever, they have the cheat code to gain 1 or 2 or even 3 yards almost guaranteed. So that puts the Eagles over the edge in my mind to beat the Buccaneers, which brings me to my hypothetical NFC Championship. The Lions and the Eagles. Lions, their second NFC Championship appearance in as many years, seeking their first Super Bowl appearance, and I do not think that they will disappoint. They are going to be so ready for this game. They are going to have all the memories of San Francisco last year. One of the worst days of my life personally was that day, was watching that second half just fall away. And the Lions are going to bring the heat. They're going to bring all the gimmicks out of the bag, all the tricks that they have left. Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, they're going to be ready. They're going to have a plan for whoever it is that they would play in this game. And there's no way that the Lions let it slip away. Super Bowl, Bills, Lions, and I'm biased enough to pick the Lions, even though the Bills showed that they were the better team pretty clearly a few weeks ago. I'm still taking the Lions. Sue me, I don't care. Lions all the way. Lions for the Super Bowl. That's it for this. This was very... I just got up and recorded this really without any thought or prep going into it, which is why I didn't really necessarily have any sort of like data, solid facts, evidence behind what I was saying. I was mostly just spitballing, but yeah, Lions over the Bills in the Super Bowl is my end of playoffs prediction. You heard it here first. See you guys.